you will go through a separation phase where usually you'll learn how to get into a deep state where you are in this in-between state between awake and asleep. And when you get there, you normally start experiencing these non-physical sensations. Like you said before, you felt vibrations. That will be one of them. And it can also be that you hear sounds. And in that moment, what we do is that we simply just stand up. We just sit up from the bed. And when we're doing this, this isn't an imaginary, dreamy experience. This is fully physical. So this is something that I experienced so many times in my projections, is that when I get into that state, I just sit up from the bed and I feel how I'm essentially separating from my physical body. I feel that movement. Then I move away from my bed. And a lot of times I'll
Welcome to Soul Explorers with your hosts, Gary Langley and Sally Taylor.
Welcome to Soul Explorers. I am your host, Sally Taylor. You will notice I am alone today. My co-host, Gary Langley, has had a personal tragedy in his life, which I will give a little more information at the end of this video. So if you will forward at some point to that place, whether you watch through this full thing first or you want to go check that out and then come back to the beginning of this video, that's quite all right. But hopefully he will be back with us by the next time we have another interview. So I would love to introduce to you Florentin Ionita. He is an astral projection explorer and teacher, as well as a filmmaker, which I find to be really fascinating. And he is here to tell us a little bit about his experiences and how it all came to him. So that said, Florentin, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Exciting to be here. And sorry for what happened to Gary. It sounds really
thank you.
difficult.
Yeah, well, luckily he's still with us. So I will definitely pass all of that on to him, and hopefully he will be back on his feet very soon. But that said, let me ask you, how did you become involved with astral projection? It's not something that even a lot of people know anything about. It's an interesting experience.
Yeah, it's funny because most people have no idea that you can actually leave your body, right? So it's a really interesting topic to discuss at the dinner table sometimes. And for me, it started, well, I think, when you look back, you see that there's so many points where it started. Like it's not really one place. It's like there's all these micro breadcrumbs. There's like small puzzle pieces being laid out for you. And I think for me, it kind of really started with movies in general, movies like sci-fi movies, especially The Matrix. That was one of the ones that really got me questioning my reality. And I think it does that for a lot of people. It makes you like wonder, what is reality, and what is real, and is this real, and how do you know? And like you start getting to all these thoughts. And for me, it was also it was kind of like that movie was definitely like a spiritual awakening moment in a way, because it made me ask these questions. And I think when we start asking more deeper questions, it does take us on that journey of spiritual development. It takes us down the rabbit hole. We start to be like Alice in Wonderland, walking down that rabbit hole, trying to figure things out. And that definitely happened for me. And at the same time, I was also deeply impressed with the movie itself and the art, the visual effects, the sound effects, the music. It's such a good movie. So I, as a young boy, I remember looking at the stars one night, and I was just kind of like, with my hand on my chest, just looking at the stars, and like, you know what? One day I want to work on a movie like The Matrix. And I decided to pursue a career working with Hollywood movies. That was the plan. And, fast forward, I studied visual effects and graphics for a few years. And then I slowly got into the industry, working with commercials and then working with music videos, documentaries, all kinds of stuff. Eventually ended up working on big Hollywood movies like Superman, like Iron Man, and it was a dream come true. It was super cool, but it was still, it was definitely fulfilling me on a creative level, but there was something missing on a, let's say, spiritual level. I started to sort of explore spirituality more and more on my free time, and I started to feel like there was something missing in my life. My work was cool, but there was an essence, a connectivity to something a bit more deeper that was missing. And I was working with all of these superheroes that could fly, that could teleport, and I really felt somewhere within that the world, that there's more out there in the world than what we know, than what we can touch, taste, feel, smell, all that stuff. So inside I kind of knew that there was more, but I wasn't really sure what. And I was searching and I was looking for different teachers. I was looking for different people that maybe had some answers. And I would go to different workshops and retreats, and I'll try to just kind of ask people like bigger questions, like, so what do you think is the purpose of all this? Why are we here? And all these bigger questions. And it was difficult to find someone that actually knew anything. Most people just kind of like said, well, you just have to trust in the universe, and just, very wishy-washy answers I would normally get. And it wasn't satisfying. And then I was also exploring psychedelics as well. I was exploring ayahuasca, I was exploring mushrooms and LSD, and I could see, all these, mind-blowing things when I was on these substances. And I would wonder, like, what is it that I'm seeing? What is this other, world that I'm seeing? It's definitely something beyond our senses, but what is this? And I slowly started to meet interesting people that had pieces of the knowledge. And, some of them would tell me, like, you don't actually need to take these substances to have experiences, where you can explore consciousness. And I was like, what do you mean? Well, there is something called astral projection. There's these out-of-body experiences that you can have. And I was completely like hooked when I heard that. I was like, there's a way to have experiences beyond this dimension without any substances? Show me, what is it? Take me there. And so I was guided to different workshops in London. I found out about this guy called Falcon, who was teaching these type of things. And I went to many of his workshops and then many of his retreats. And I was skeptical at first, because I'm a very rational type of person. So I need to see things to believe things. It's not enough for me to just hear about it and then I'm just like, okay, that's it, I believe it. I need to kind of have some sort of proof that it is real. So when I first started with this, it was a theory that we could leave our bodies, that we could explore in this way, that we are souls. And it sounded like a really good theory, and I enjoyed the philosophy of it, or the theory of it. It sounded great, but I still had this big hurdle that I needed to experience it to believe it. And in one of these workshops, I actually had my first experience that was enough evidence that there was something more going on than I could explain. And that was that we were wearing these eye masks. So for the people that are listening right now that cannot watch this, I'm holding up an eye mask. This is essentially just a black mask that we put on our eyes. And when we use this when we project, because a lot of times when we get deep enough into these deeper states, and also on my screen here I have these graphics, which you can see, when we get into these deeper states, which is like the theta brainwave state, which is just above delta where we sleep, sometimes we can start seeing through our eyelids. And that's why we wear this mask, because we can start suddenly seeing through the mask and we're seeing our room. And that's what happened to me the first time, my first experience ever. I got into the state and I can suddenly see the room I was in as clear as I can see you right now. Like everything was super clear, vivid. And if I didn't have the mask on, I would have thought that I had my eyes open and I was looking around the room, because it was the same. I couldn't tell the difference. but I knew that I had my mask on, so I knew that holy shit, I'm actually seeing through a physical object, which is obviously impossible with your physical eyes. And at the same time, I could also hear sounds that I knew was not coming from the room. There was sounds of, in this case, it's been different sounds in different occasions, but in this scenario, the first time it was sounds of nature. I could hear this river creaking by, and I could hear birds and the sound of the wind in the tree, like very subtle nature sounds that you could only hear if you're actually out in nature. I was hearing that in this house that we were, and I knew that this was something non-physical. I knew that I was hearing something that wasn't in the room, because the room was normally completely silent where we were. We were like in this, old Victorian house out in Ireland, and there was no neighbors around. There's just completely silent. So if you ever hear anything, you know that it's coming from somewhere else. So I was hearing this very clear sound of nature. I was seeing through my eye mask, and I'm like, oh my God, this is happening. I'm actually having an experience now. I know now from experience that if I would have exited, meaning if I were to actually move away from the bed in that moment, I wouldn't be able to start traveling beyond the body, because I was in this in-between state where we are essentially we loosen up from the body in that moment. But I was so surprised of what I was seeing. I was so mesmerized that I could see through this mask that was enough for me on my first, experience. So, of course, what happens to most people, definitely happened to me, is that I got excited. I was like, oh my God, this is happening. And then, of course, within seconds, the experience starts to fade away. And then I was back into my mask. And now I could not see through the mask, which is pitch black. I had to take it off in order to see. And then I could actually see the room that I was in. It was looking exactly the same. And then the next day, we actually went for a walk, and I ended up finding out that this river that I could hear was about 200 meters away from the room that I was practicing in. And all those sounds that I could hear from the bedroom was there, like 200 meters away. And that was like the first time I got some confirmation that what I was experiencing, wasn't my imagination. It wasn't a dream. I mean, I knew it from the beginning that it wasn't a dream or my imagination, because it's a very different experience. It's like when you have it, you're having it. You don't mistake it for a dream, or definitely not for imagination. Imagination is very, very, very different. This is a full-on virtual, full-on immersive experience that is as real, sometimes even more real than physical reality.
So you talked about getting excited, and that's something that I have actually experienced multiple times as well. When I, many years ago, was working on achieving an astral projection state as well, I did experience what a lot of people talk about as the vibrational state. And that would either, initially it scared me. So fear, it seems, has an impact as well. And that would
Oh
knock
yeah.
me out, and it'd be done. I'd be over. But as I got used to that, and it kind of softened, it was my excitement too that seemed to throw me out. How did you sort of go through that process of learning to calm your own emotional state enough that it took you further?
That's a great question. A lot of people struggle with this. A lot of our students as well, like, coming to our programs, trying to learn this. They're getting the best program out there to learn this, but then they still have their own fears and their own beliefs with them, which is something that obviously they're coming with them, is their baggage, so to speak. And it's interesting because your subconscious mind and your beliefs, they're so powerful. They really shape your reality. And so sometimes people come in very, very open-minded, without any preconceived ideas of what this is going to be like, or what fears to be afraid, or things to be afraid of. And they're kind of like an open slate. And I was definitely an open slate when I came into this. So I didn't really have a bunch of worries or fears or concerns. I didn't have the classical ones like, oh, what if I get stuck and don't come back to the body? Or I didn't have the other one of, oh, what if I get possessed by an entity, or demons? Like, none of that stuff was in my field, in my awareness. I guess it's because, the teacher I had at that time, which was this guy Falcon. He didn't, he shared some challenging stories and stuff, and but it wasn't, the focus wasn't on that. It wasn't about warning you for something that was out there that's going to come and get you, or it was very positive. It was very, meaningful, positive. And so I had a lot of positivity in me, a lot of, I looked forward to have these experiences without any concerns, without any fears. And I think that's a much more empowering state to be in than to do what some other people do is they go online and they try to research this and they go into all the darkest corners of the web, finding all kinds of scary experiences that people have had. And usually those experiences are actually related to sleep paralysis and not so much to astral projection. And people confuse them. They don't really know what is what.
Could you describe the difference between astral projection and that sleep paralysis state? Because that's also, especially as a young person, much younger, I haven't experienced it for a long time, but as a child and a young adult, I had a lot of sleep paralysis and it was
Right.
scary.
Mm.
How do you understand the difference between those?
Well, I mean, the main difference between them is that, sleep paralysis happens usually, it happens to a lot of people. It's something that happens spontaneously. It's not something that you decide you're gonna have, versus an astral projection. You actually, you plan to have it. You decide, okay, now I'm gonna do it. Sure, it can happen spontaneously sometimes to people. It does happen, and it can freak them out because they don't know what's happening. They're like, oh my God, I'm out of my body. And then they freak out and they come back. But usually those are very short experiences that people, because the thing is, as soon as you get excited, as soon as you get scared, that peak of emotion is going to be transferred to the body as well. And the body wakes up and pulls you back immediately. So even if you have a spontaneous out-of-body experience, it would usually be a very short one that pulls you back quite quickly. So you don't really have time to get too scared or too worried. However, a sleep paralysis experience, that's different because you can suddenly wake up from sleep and you are in your bed and you notice that you're just unable to move. And if you don't know what's happening, if you don't know that it's a natural thing that the body does, the body goes into sleep paralysis in order to not act up on the dreams. When you're dreaming at night, if you're running, for your it's for your survival, the best for your survival that you don't move when you're acting out. You don't want to act out a dream because, back in the days, if you're sleeping in a tree or something and you started running suddenly because you're doing in your dreams, you'll fall out of that tree and you'll hurt yourself. So, it's a evolutionary survival mechanism that the body paralyzes itself when we're sleeping. So it's normal that we're in a paralysis when we're sleeping, but what's not normal is that we wake up in the middle of that process and then the body's still paralyzed. That's not normal. It happens to a lot of people though, so it's still kind of normal. And the problem is that most people, when that happens, is that people are not aware of what it is. And so they get very scared because they think something is wrong or they think maybe that they're dying. And that fear, when you start to feel that fear, because you are in this in-between state between awake and asleep, those fears, those emotions you feel will start to manifest as, real looking things in the room. So, you might start to see scary monsters in the room, or the old hag sitting on your chest, or spiders, or octopus, like you name it. There's all kinds of experiences that people have had, and they're not pleasant. And it's usually that there is something scary in the room and the person is not able to move. Plus, there's a feeling of a difficulty to breathe. It's like difficult. There's like this pressure on the chest. So that can sometimes mess with the people's mind, thinking that there's like someone that's holding them down and trying to strangle them. And it's just a really not a nice experience when people have it. But it's because they have this fear. When they let go of the fear, when they realize that it's a natural process that takes place, then what happens usually is that these monsters and these scary things disappears from the room. And now they're just experiencing the sleep process of itself, just the feeling of just being kind of paralyzed. And the best thing, to do is obviously for someone that, maybe if someone that's listening right now, if you ever had, these experiences and maybe you're still having them, you can actually escape this state very easily because you can control certain things. Like, for example, your breathing. So the best thing to do is just to start breathing in a very unrhythmical way. You just fast, slow, slow, fast, in a way that the body realizes that you've actually woken up. And then as soon as that, you've done that, the body will break the sleep paralysis, and you're now back to control again. And you can control your body.
Oh, okay. So let me ask you then, if you could share a few of the astral projection experiences you've had that maybe changed your perspective on how you understand reality. Can you give us a few examples of the types of things you've experienced in that state?
Yeah, that's definitely a great question. So I can share a few. I think the first one that was, I guess the first ones that I always remember is the first ones are the most, those are like the ones that really kind of like open your mind, open your eyes up to that there is something more than what you've been led to believe, let's say, or that than what you know or what other people know. For me, it's start off with these very physical ones, the ones where a lot of times people think that astral projection and lucid dreaming are very much the same thing. And I like to shed some lights on that because one of the main differences between how the experiences takes place is the fact that when you have an astral projection or an out of body experience, to me they're the same thing, by the way, astral projection, out of body experience, you will go through a separation phase where usually you'll learn how to get into a deep state where you are in this in between state between awake and asleep. And when you get there, you normally start experiencing these non-physical sensations. Like you said before, you felt vibrations. That will be one of them. And it can also be that you hear sounds. And in that moment, what we do is that we simply just stand up. We just sit up from the bed. And when we're doing this, this isn't an imaginary, dreamy experience. This is fully physical. So this is something that I experienced so many times in my projections, is that when I get into that state, I just sit up from the bed and I feel how I'm essentially separating from my physical body. I feel that movement. Then I move away from my bed. And a lot of times I would have to use my non-physical hands to grab onto maybe the bed and crawl kind of out on the bed, grab onto the chair next to my bed and kind of pull myself out. And I'm getting closer to the wall, and sometimes putting my hands through the wall, and kind of I can feel the cables and what's in there. I can feel that with my non-physical hands. And then in one of my experiences, I decided I would go out of my flat. And the thing is that when you get out of body, the first seconds or so, you actually, a lot of times you don't have any vision. So you actually have to command the vision to start. And you also have to command your hearing to start. Sometimes you don't have none of those senses. You have to kind of activate them. But you do have movements and feelings. So you can move around like a blind person and you can kind of do that. So, in this one experience, I was not having any vision, and I was trying to get my vision to work. And I was very close to my body. And I learned afterwards that if you're too close to your body, your sort of vision centers gets kind of interfered with each other. So you have to take some distance. So I decided to get out of this flat that I was in. And for some reason, I just kind of went backwards and I put my head through the window of this flat. And then I kind of pushed myself out. And I was now hovering outside on the third floor. And I could, as soon as I went through the window, I could hear the sounds from outside. I could feel the temperature change. Everything is so physical, everything just feels super real, but I still didn't have any vision at this point. So I floated down to the ground. I could feel the grass on my feet. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to try to work on my vision. So I worked on my vision. I start seeing eventually after, a few seconds of repeating these commands, like awareness now, vision now, clarity now, classical William Beelman commands. And then I started seeing, and this was very interesting. This was one of the experiences that showed me that we see very differently out of body. It's not always that we have the same type of vision, but in this experience, I had this vision where I could see, it was almost like everything was kind of glowing, but not glowing like with this halo ring. It was just like very vivid colors. Like I've never seen the grass so vivid before. I've never seen, the houses around so vivid. And I would look around, I was just kind of like mesmerized by what how vivid and how strong the colors and how bright everything was. It wasn't like this dim dream. It was very, very clear colors. And I remember seeing these boys that was cycling past where I was, and as soon as you look at something in the astral, a lot of times you just kind of teleport there. So that's what happened to me. I was looking at these boys, very attentive, and then next thing you know, I'm now floating next to these boys that are cycling on the road, and I'm looking at their faces, and I'm kind of trying to get ahead of them a little bit and see if they can see me, and they could not see me. And I was getting closer and closer to their faces. And it was very interesting because I could see that something was strange, something was different about this boy's face. And I got closer and closer. And what I saw was that his eyes were strange. Strange in what way? Well, his iris wasn't black, like we have black irises. It was white. And I realized very quickly that what was happening was that, when we look at someone's iris, we see that they have this blackness. And this is where my visual effects background comes in handy, because I look at things very, from a very graphical point of view. I see all the different pixels, so to speak. Like when you work for Hollywood movies, you have to become very good at looking at small details because the quality they are expecting is extremely high, So we get very good with details. So when I saw his white eyes, I quickly realized that, light here is not coming from outside. Light here is actually coming from within. So the reason his eyes were white was because there was light inside of his eyes. We have black irises because there's no light coming in there from the outside, because it's like a hole. It's like dark in there. So then I realized why everything looked so kind of glowy, because I was literally seeing like everything was actually lit from within. Like every cell of his body had a bit of light. Every cell in the plants had a bit of light. So everything was had its own light source. There was no shadow. There was no highlight from somewhere else, like the sun and that we have here. It was very different.
So let me ask, when you have had, for example, this experience with the boys, do you have any way of determining if they are boys that are in physical bodies, or are they in more of an astral plane where other people, living human beings, might not see them? Where do you think you are in relation to what you're seeing in front of you?
Yeah, and sometimes you can get, like downloads when you get to places, and you can sort of like get it's like a strong intuition of knowing, oh, I am in the future, or I am in a parallel life, or I am, in the physical or something. And in that experience, to be honest, I don't know what it was. I think maybe it was a parallel astral kind of experience. But the thing is, because what I've experienced many times is sometimes I go to places and the people there, they see me and they know stuff about me. They can tell, they know that I'm a visitor. They know that I'm not from there. They know things that I'm like, how do you guys know that? Like they can sort of telepathically get this information. So they're kind of more advanced. In other places, they are completely oblivious to me. They don't see me. I'm invisible. And it was definitely the case with these boys. They're like, they couldn't see me. So what I tried, which was kind of funny, I was like, maybe if I say something, they can hear me. So I said, hello. And the boy that I was really close to, he freaked out. He almost fell down from his bicycle. And he stopped and he just kind of looked around and he was just pointing and, kind of calling on his friends that there was something here. And I realized that they heard me and they got freaked out, just like, we would be if you suddenly hear a voice out of nowhere,
right,
in your ear. So I definitely scared some people or some beings, some people out in these different dimensions, not intentionally, just because I tried to make contact. And I experienced this a lot of times that for some reason they could not many times they can't see me, but they can hear me for some reason, and they get always freaked out when I say hello or something, you know.
Well, and that makes me think a little bit about, I told you before we started that I have in my adult life become a medium.
Hmm.
And while I don't necessarily hear exterior to myself, I sometimes hear quite loudly interiorly. So
Hmm.
if spirit can come across to us in the physical world, even if we don't see them, I'm not a medium that is clairvoyant in that I see people in front of me like I see you, right? But I do get a lot of mind's eye. But the auditory can be what I consider a loud thought. So I can
Mm.
see how a young man who might not be able to see you on whatever plane he was on might still be able to hear. So it's a really interesting. Have you continued to sort of test that in the locations you found yourself out of body?
Test if I can communicate with
Well, I mean,
people.
is this something that happens a lot? Right. Yes. How often are you where people can't see you as opposed to where they can?
Mm. Wow, I would say it's almost like 50-50.
Okay.
It's really yeah, something like 50-50 that this happens.
I just made that correlation because in reality, I have to admit to hearing quite a few things from people that I can't physically see. And so, you're talking about the movie The Matrix and how that impacted you so heavily. And I kind of still think about even this existence in that way. Like we're just running around living lives on this plane of existence that we're focused into at the moment. But certainly it seems that not only can we occasionally experience other planes, but they can also come across to us. So let me ask you
Yeah.
then, with this really incredible skill that you have developed, how has it impacted your life? Have you noticed shifts in other ways? Have you become more intuitive? Have you become maybe a little more aware of beings that you're not physically aware of when you're in your wakeful state?
You know, I think that this is it's a very powerful spiritual practice. I would say the most powerful spiritual practice there is, because it's the only practice that allows you to explore and experience what you are beyond the physical body. You know, experiencing your soul, experiencing how it is to be outside of your physical body. And for me, and of course, I think for everybody that has had a few experiences, it really does do a big shift in perspective and in perception of the universe and of oneself. The fact that you no longer believe that you will continue after physical death, or that there is something out there, like you know because you've seen it. And that's why it's so powerful, because you can with this practice, it gives you access to a possibility to have your own personal experiences, not someone else telling you that this is possible, or some, you know, a preacher or a book, a religion telling you that this or this is real, because that's just going to be a belief system. And beliefs, you know, belief can only go so far. It can only help you so much. But you're still going to have a bit of doubt when you believe something, because you haven't actually experienced it. It's just someone else, somebody else, or some people or group of people that told you that reality is like this. But it's not until you have your own experiences that you can really feel like you know what you know. Just like here in the physical, we have a human experience. And, you know, imagine if you didn't have a human experience. Imagine if you had to kind of explain what love feels like to somebody that's never had a human experience. How are you going to do that? It's very difficult. How does it feel to be in a human body? Explain that to another soul. It's very difficult. So we need to come down here and experience a physical life, physical reality. The human experience needs to be experienced, right? We need to experience it to understand it. And it's the same with these other experiences, like being out of your body. We need to experience it to know what it feels like. Now, of course, we have experienced this many times, because every time we die in the physical and our body dies, we continue on to another non-physical plane, and then we can choose to come back again. So it's not something completely new for us. But, you know, as you know, we forget about these experiences when we reincarnate here. And that is what I've understood from my guides. It's by design. We are supposed to forget our previous lives when we come here. It's a part of the deal of coming down here. And then we're supposed to go on the journey of truth when we're here. We're supposed to kind of reawaken ourselves in the simulation or in this game, what this is pretty much what it is, right? We're supposed to look for answers. We're supposed to ask bigger questions. We're supposed to try to figure out who we are, what we are, and kind of stand up in our power. And that's something that I think it's very important for us at the moment, because we are waking up more and more, we're becoming more and more intelligent as a collective. But are we going in the right direction? Because right now, we're, as you probably have seen, there's a lot of technology and AI that's being poured out. And I love AI stuff. I love technology, but I can also see that it can take us to a very dark place, because it might not help us with our spiritual awakening. I hope it's actually going to help us with our spiritual awakening. I hope that people can choose to use this technology to help us figure out these bigger questions and help us to fine tune the technology that we use for having these experiences, for being able to induce out-of-body experiences, for example. I definitely
So
believe it's possible.
that was something I wanted to ask you then. A lot of people who are trying to learn to do this, they'll use things like hemisync sounds, music, whatever it
Yeah.
happens to be. Although you initially talked about being in sort of silence, what do you use technology-wise, if any, besides the
So
mask, to help you experience?
technology is super important for this practice, because it's very, very difficult for the average person to just lay down, close their eyes, and get into this state that we have to get into, which is very, very, very deep. It's deeper than most people have ever been sort of in meditation. It's beyond the normal meditation that most people have probably done. It's very difficult to get there and not fall asleep and kind of lose yourself. It's very difficult. So then this was definitely one of the issues and challenges I had when I was doing this practice in the beginning. I was trying to get into this state. It was very much a hit and miss. It was very difficult to get there consistently. I would lay down and try for hours. In the beginning, I would fall asleep a lot. And then after some time, I learned how to conquer sleep, but then I couldn't get deep enough to have an experience. So it was very challenging. So what I started doing, because of my background with visual effects and technology and all that stuff, I'm very good at figuring out how stuff works. And so I figured out how, what was needed, what I needed to do in order to get into these states. So I started to create my own soundtracks with my own binaural beats, my own frequencies, and not just frequencies, but specific commands and specific guidance with my own voice, specific sound effects. I would use hypnosis, everything that I could possibly get my hands on. I would put it in these long, very long soundtracks, not like 1 hour. It takes at least 2 hours to do this. And then these soundtracks will help not only guide me into the right state, but also wake me up in case I were to fall asleep sometimes in a subtle way. And when I created these soundtracks and this system that I am now teaching to other people, this system is what got me to reach high success rates, like 100%, where every time I tried to do this, I would know exactly what steps to take using these soundtracks and the systems that I developed, and then I'll be able to have an out-of-body experience on demand, on right there and then. It still take me a good 1 hour, maybe 2 hours to do so. It never really happens so quickly. Some people can actually do this in just 10 minutes, but I call them gifted children, because
Right.
it's very easy
I
for
was
them.
not that. Yeah.
I was not
It took
that
me
either. So
months.
yeah, and
And I still didn't get very far. I think you've far surpassed anything I have ever experienced. I may be interested in your class. So let me go ahead and have you describe real quickly the programs that you offer to people, so that if people are interested in joining one of your classes, they know how to find that.
right now we have created a really powerful learning platform on School, which is a course platform, School. Some people know, some people don't know, but it's essentially a very simple to use platform where you have the essential things, because there's a few things that you need to have to learn this skill specifically. You need to have, well, you need to have guidance, and so and you need to have soundtracks and technology and support system and community and all that kind of stuff. So what we have created is essentially, it's a community platform where you can connect with other people that are, you know, into this. And the thing is that there are many people into this, but you don't really find them on, you know, on the street, or, you know, most likely most of your friends would not know what this stuff is, or would think you're crazy if you do this. So it's very important to have a supportive community around this when you're doing it, so that you can actually talk to other people. And our community is very special because we have really focused a lot on the community aspect. So, you know, every week we have a meetup where we all connect together. Every month we have an awards session where we award the person that's been the most valuable to the community, that's been kind of contributing the most. We're kind of simulating a little supportive warm community where people can come and share their experiences and not be alone with this, and really feel like there's other people out there that they can talk to about this, that understands them, and they don't judge them. They're not like, oh, what is this crazy out of body experience? Are you crazy? Why would you do that? Like, no, like people understand why you would do that. People really get it, and they're really passionate about talking about it, sharing their experiences. And so you can see every day people posting their experiences, what they saw, what they did, how they did it, which method was the one that worked for them. And then we have the classroom where you have this full-blown 12 weeks program where you learn the 3 main methods. And so what I discovered was that everybody's different. And so, you know, just providing one way of doing something isn't the most efficient. So there is essentially only 3 methods out there for astral projection. The first one is the indirect method, which is how to have an out-of-body experience by transitioning from a lucid dream. So you learn how to lucid dream and then how to transition from a lucid dream. The second one is what we call the semi-indirect method, which is a method that we do upon awakening from sleep. So that moment when you wake up from sleep, you're in that in-between state. So you can capitalize on that upon awakening from sleep. And we have special soundtracks for that. So that kind of wakes you up and tells you what to do, because otherwise you're not going to remember when you wake up. And then the final one, the third one, is the most common, the most famous one, the direct method, which is when we meditate ourselves into this deep state. And so we teach all of these 3 methods. We provide soundtracks for all these methods to help reprogram your subconscious mind, to help get you into the right state. And also we have tracking tools, because even if you have all of this stuff, if you don't track your practice, if you don't know what you've done and how you've done the practice, you're not going to get to a high success rate. But if you do, you can get to a very high success rate. You can get to, 100% success rate, because you fine tune the practice so well that you know exactly what time you have to wake up, what method to do, what position to be in, what technique to use. Like all of these, there's so many details to the practice that when you have them down, then you've created what I like to call a projection blueprint, which is the blueprint of what makes projection possible for you, which is unique to you and only you, because everyone is different and you have to create your own. And that's what the program is focused on, is very practically focusing on guiding you through this process of trial and error with the different methods, using the scientific method to just fine-tune your practice until you get to a very high success rate, where you can essentially use this as a tool, because that's what it is. Astral projection is a tool for self-exploration and for exploring and healing and all that kind of stuff. And if it only works sometimes, it's not very it's not very useful. Imagine having a computer that just only works sometimes. It won't be very useful. So it's about learning how to use it on a regular basis. That's very key. And then, of course, the last component that I also wanted to share before I give it up to you is the coaching. This is where you come on and meet with us, and we're able to help you with your practice. You've tried different things. Maybe you got stuck. Something wasn't working. Come on the coaching, and then we can talk about it, and we can help fine-tune everything and make sure that you focus more of your time on progress and not frustration. And that happens every week. And then we also do special events. When we have on my first teacher, Falcon, he comes on and teaches on this platform. And also me, I'm teaching different things. And also we have another guy called Matthew. He's teaching different things. There's breath work, there's healing. There's like many things that are connected to this practice, because this is, yeah, it's a very powerful spiritual practice that's connected to everything else in life. You know, limiting belief will affect it, fears will affect it. So we need to work on all of these different levels to actually get you out in the astral, and then get you to have very awesome experiences and very meaningful experiences where you connect with your spirit guides or connect with a loved one, all of that kind of stuff.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like you've really developed a very holistic way of coming at all of this. So I did want to go back to, because you had brought up guides earlier, and you've just now said, talked about guides and loved ones again. A lot of times, and this was my case, people start to look at astral projection because they're aware that they might be able to have contact with guides and loved ones. Have you had those direct experiences? It sounds like you have yourself. And could you
Yeah,
maybe describe that just a little bit?
sure. So yeah, I've met with my guides, and one of the experiences that I've had, one of the first one was, I always loved the first ones because they're just so magical. The first one of the first one was, imagine this: you're laying there, you're practicing, you're like, okay, I'm gonna get out of body, and you have a very strong intention that you're gonna meet with your spirit guide, which is important. So imagine lying there for maybe an hour. That's what I was doing. I was just lying there for an hour trying to get out of body. And I wasn't getting anywhere. I was just like, oh, what's happening? I'm not getting anywhere. Still, like, how long has it been? And then suddenly I feel someone's hand grabbing me. And this can be quite scary for people if they, if they have scare, if they watch a lot of movies, a lot of scary movies. But luckily, I was calm, and I trusted what was going on, and I felt it was a hand of a woman. I could feel it was this, very subtle grab of a female hand that just took my hand and just started pulling me, and I just kind of let it take me, and it just pulled me out of body. And I got out of body, and I remember that I had this issue. I couldn't see anything. So I started making my commands. I was like, clarity now, vision now, clarity now. And by the time I started seeing, that poor person that helped me out disappeared. It was no longer there. So I don't know who it was, but later in that experience, when I started experience, I was in a forest, and I remembered my intention to meet with my spirit guide. So I made this intention to meet my spirit guide, and then I see this, Pocahontas-looking woman floating above the ground in the middle of this forest. Very much like in a video game, you have these characters that wait for you that you can go up and talk to. It was very much like that, and I just kind of knew that, okay, this is probably my spirit guide. So I go up to her and I start talking to her, and I'm like, hey, are you my spirit guide? And she's like, yes. And we had a bit of a conversation back and forth. And what I remember was that I asked my most important question, which was, why did I choose to come here in this lifetime? What's my mission? Or why did I choose to reincarnate? And, what she said was that you chose to reincarnate because you wanted to experience love and relationships. And she kind of left me with that. And that's common with guides, that they don't give you too much details. They don't give you all the details. You have to kind of like figure things out yourself. They give you hints, they help you in the right direction, but they don't tell you everything, because then things will be too easy when you're here. They're supposed to be a challenge. But I think that was a big message for me, and it's something that till this day I reflect on, when it comes to love and relationships. What is that, Well, to me, that's everything. I think life is pointless without love and relationships. It's like kind of the main reason why we're here. But exactly what kind of relationships, was it about romantic relationships that I chose to come here? Was it about, relationships to everybody? Like, I don't fully know that, but I'm exploring that.
Wow, that's really an amazing experience. And it's funny, I find through mediumship that there is a really amazing number of Native American peering guides, and I've actually come across answers for the reasons that that is, which maybe I'll share another time, but not surprising to me that you described a Native American because they seem to be very active as guides a lot of the time. And then have you had the opportunity of meeting any loved ones that have transitioned out of the physical world, or is that something you're
No,
still waiting for?
it's yeah. I mean, something that I'll likely do when my parents pass away. Which it's
You,
also that's actually a big important thing to mention as well. I think a lot of us fear the idea that our loved ones is going to die one day. It's because we have a very, I would say, dark, negative look upon death. And it's not our fault because every single Hollywood movie you've ever seen, the most tragic thing that can happen to anybody in a movie is that they die. It's the worst thing. So I think we've been conditioned so much that death is terrible that we fear the idea of our loved ones dying. And I think astral projection can really soothe us with that because we not only knowing that they're not dying, knowing that they're continuing after physical death, but also that if you learn this skill, you can actually go and visit them. You can actually connect with them again and get that confirmation that they're still alive in a different form, another different place, but nonetheless that they're still alive. And also get the confirmation that you will also continue after death. I think that really helps us here to remove some of the fears that we have with living life here. Because I think life here can be real hell sometimes if you have a lot of fears that you hold on to. But if we imagine if we could live a life here knowing that we are this infinite spiritual being that doesn't die, that's here to learn and grow, that's here to expand, that we are this magnificent, unlimited beings that can create anything, versus this limited human being that has no purpose, is just here by accident, and life has no purpose, and we're just going to die and disappear. Like that's a very dark view that a lot of people have when it comes to what the meaning of life is and stuff. And I think this is a much more empowering view to have and a more empowering belief system. But it's not just a belief system; it's something that you can actually experience for yourself to know that it's the case. And that's why I think it's very important for people to do this, because imagine if you could know that you're going to continue, if you knew that your loved ones will continue, if you knew that, how would your life be? How would you live life? Would you live life more fully without fear? Yes. Would you take more risks and just kind of believe in yourself more, knowing that you're just this great, amazing soul that is limitless? Like I think the limitations we put on ourselves will go. I mean, I know for myself, it goes away when I think about it in this way. When I look at myself as this, powerful being that's not limited by my identity here in this lifetime, that I can be anything that I want. That really empowers me to be able to stretch myself out to do things that maybe my personality wouldn't do, normally. But because I know that this is just a temporary form that I'm incarnating in right now, and I can expand myself to become greater if I want to. And how epic would it not be if you are going to step into the best version of yourself that you can ever be in this lifetime? I think that's way more epic than to kind of settle for something less because of fear and safety.
beautifully said. Well, with that said, where can people find you if they're interested in finding out more?
I have a free community that people can join, where we have a free so we have a free community and a free program in there, and this is a great place for people to get started. They can learn more about this thing, and more about me, and more about what we do. And then for those that are really serious and they want to have experiences quicker, they can also upgrade to our premium community, and then they can get our coaching and speak to us in person and all that kind of stuff. It's like a progression, but we have a free community for people to start off, and it's called Soul Guides Free, and it's on School. And so the description will have some links below, and you guys can click on that and join us.
Thank you so much, Florentine. This has been a fascinating conversation. You're so well spoken and able to tell about your experience that I think a lot of people will really want to see more and hopefully experience these states for themselves.
That's the best gift that I can probably provide, for people, is to have their own experiences. Because, you know, when I first had my experiences, I knew I wanted to share it with people, but I quickly realized that this is not something you can share verbally, because most people don't really believe you or really understand this until they have their own experiences. So that's why I went on the quest to actually, you know, I left the Hollywood movie industry. That was a very cool career and very awesome, to do something that was more important, which is this, you know, teaching people how they can tap into their real, authentic, you know, self, their source. And this is something that is all about experience. It's not about just speaking about it. It's about, hey, here are the tools. Here's what you have to do. Do it. And with our help, you can do it way faster than if you were to try it alone. Like, people try alone, try for years, and they just don't really get anywhere. But when you have the right system, the right tools, the guidance, you can get out of body in a few weeks. You can even go out of body in the first attempt. This happens also with a lot of people. So,
That's
you know,
really
make it.
encouraging.
Yeah, it is. And we're just getting better and better all the time. We're always updating our tools and creating better systems and technology. And, you know, the goal is to make it so easy that everybody can do it quickly and fast. And, you know, the more people can tap into this, the more this is going to become, the more people is going to wake up to who they are. If this is something that just a few, you know, nerdy people that are into this stuff can do this, it's not really going to take this very far. But if, you know, if everybody can tap into this, if you watch something on, you know, on YouTube, like, oh, I want to do this, and the next day you learn how to do it and you can do it, you know, like, this is going to spread so much more. And collectively, we're going to start waking up to who we are. And that's kind of the mission that we are on, is to wake up the collective, to wake people up to the fact that we are more than this physical body, so that people get out of this ignorance that we are in right now, this kind of this limitation that we're just these flesh and bones bodies, and we die and there's no purpose to us. Like, it's a very limited view that a lot of people have kind of succumbed to, because they haven't seen any more convincing things out there. I mean, religion was enough back in the day, but I think now people need to see things, need to actually believe it. And this is the one practice that you can see things to believe it for yourself.
Thank you again, Florentine, for such a fascinating discussion. I don't know about you, but I find that there is more and more people looking specifically for this information. That awakening that you've been talking about is definitely here. It's coming,
Yeah.
and people are more and more curious to
Yeah,
experience
people more
these
and more
things.
ready, you know.
Yes,
People are,
yes.
and more people are spiritual. More and more people are waking up to the idea that, I am a soul in a body.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, explore it and find out.
Well, very good. Well, I hope that they will come looking for you, because I'm very curious to look at more of what you have on offer as well myself, because it has been a very long time since I've had much as far as full out of body experiences. Lucid dreams,
Sure. Well,
yes. Mediumship, yes. All of that thing occurs, and I find them to be very connected.
yeah.
Anybody who is interested in finding themselves out of body, it is life-changing. It absolutely
Yes,
changes the way you view the world.
totally. So looking forward to see you guys. Thank you so much
All
for
right.
having me, Sally.
Thank
And you're
you.
welcome to join us whenever you're ready.
I promise you, you're going to see me. All right. Thanks again, Florentine.
Now for an update on our co-host, Gary Langley.
My dear friend and co-host Gary Langley has recently experienced a personal tragedy. On the early morning of January 4th, he lost not only his home, but his beloved dog and cat, Bear and Piper, in a tragic house fire. Unfortunately, there is nothing left. And so he's not with us today, but he does hope to be back in time for our next installment. I have included here a link to the GoFundMe that we've created to help Gary with some of the immediate expenses that he will incur as a result of this recent loss. So if you feel inspired, please do consider contributing to this GoFundMe, which will help him to get back on his feet and back here with us and around those who love him. He has given so much to our community, and it's really easy for us through this program to give back just a little bit of all that he has given of himself over the years. We love you, Gary, and we can't wait to have you back with us again.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.